Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to THRIVEcast. My name is DJ Eshelman. I am your host today. So welcome one and all. And yeah, it's good to have you today. Jeff may or may not be joining us. Has a little bit of a thing going on at home. So, obviously, family first. You know what I'm saying? So, we'll just cover for him today. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. So, welcome. Before we get started today, I want to let you know that in a little while, I'll have a very special announcement for you. Something pretty big going on. Actually, if you were watching earlier in the week, you know all about this, but just in case you weren't, got something special for you on the show later today. So, but today I wanted to bring up, let's see if I can get the right buttons to hit. I apologize here. A little weirdness with the broadcast today, so hopefully people are able to join us here. I know there's nobody currently live, but no, I take that back. If you're here with us live and you're seeing it, please do let me know that everything's going okay, and that you're seeing the stream okay. Just make a comment in the chat there, and that'll help out a lot. But I wanted to introduce Nick to you today, and if I can hit the right button this time and get him actually in the stream. It's gonna be one of those days, folks. Hey, Nick, how are you today?
Hey, how's it going, DJ?
Going pretty well. Now, I realize that I'm gonna butcher your last name if I try it on my own, so I need you to help me out with it.
Yeah, no problem. I always say it's pronounced exactly like it's spelled, so Prignano.
Oh, yeah, you just gotta speed it up a lot. Yeah. Got it.
So yeah, Nick Prignano.
Gotcha.
Easy
Okay.
one to say.
So I was gonna like lengthen it way too much and make it really awkward. So I'm actually glad I didn't.
Actually, in Italian, because the G in the end, it's pronounced like lasagna. So Prignano.
Ah, yes. I got a little.
Lasagna. Yeah,
Cool.
So
So,
I'm glad to be here.
awesome. Thanks for being with us today. And before we get started, tell us a little about where you're working now and kind of give us some context of what you do now. And then we'll kind of walk back into your early development and how you got into IT work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am my current role is principal technical consultant at a consulting firm headquartered in Chicago named Ahead. I've been here since July of 2016. And my role, currently is split between pre-sales and post-sales. So I get involved in a lot of the strategic, traditionally got involved in a lot of the strategic enterprise consulting type projects that we do here.
Very cool. Very cool. So, well, walk us through, where were you born and all that kind of stuff, and where did you grow up and
yeah, absolutely.
Walk us through early childhood and kind of.
I should start by saying this is my podcast, so I appreciate you having me on, and I apologize in advance for any awkwardness. But my story, is very similar, I think, to a lot of guys that work in the EUC space. When I was younger, I was always the guy, in my family and, around that was interested in computers. I had an aunt give me, one of the original Macintosh computers that was sold off from, when they were doing a equipment refresh at her job. So I had access to technology from a pretty young age and interest in it. I really saw it, especially from the video game simulation, type of thing. That was really what drew me in, I would say, computers at a young age. And so then obviously once you have access to a computer, they don't work for, right for long. So, it's pretty quickly that you get an opportunity to figure out, why isn't it doing what I want it to do? Why am I getting this error message? So just naturally, by being curious and liking the tinkering things, I think that kind of drew me in as a young age. And then, also very quickly, I learned that, once the computer belongs to somebody else, you have to be careful when you're tinkering, right? So in this case, it was my father who owned the computer, and if I made a mistake and he couldn't get on the internet, there was going to be some choice words to be had in the house. So I learned from a pretty young age, obviously, just the idea of computers, right? I think obviously everybody knew computers were in the 80s and the 90s, but really just seeing how they work, once you get your hands on them, I think that really opens up a lot of new possibilities and paths for people. So that was really kind of what got me into it. And then I just kind of built on that. So, over time, just really like kind of explored that. And I would say my first real job in IT was when I was in high school. I was volunteering at the local library to teach senior citizens how to use Internet Explorer, right? So this was in the 90s. Internet was obviously Windows 95 was a great new thing for our culture, and I think there was a lot of people that very interested, but also very daunted by the concept of sitting down in front of something that they weren't accustomed to using, that type of form factor for accessing information. There was a lot there, right? So just giving people that kind of guided experience with using things that everybody can benefit from. Like, I think it's a no-brainer now that everybody uses the internet, but back then, there was definitely a divide. Even just sitting in a room with technology, you look over at something, to me, I would compare it to like being with my wife when we're going, for our ultrasounds for the baby. I wouldn't just walk over to the ultrasound machine and start playing around with that. Even though I have a technology background, I've worked in healthcare and IT, most of my career. That's not something that you would just naturally want to walk over and take a shot at, right? So I think that was something that from a young age, I saw that as a skill set that I had, was really kind of making technology approachable to people. So I would say, kind of following that path, that's really how I got into it.
Wow. Okay. So, and I'm seeing some elements in what you're describing here of like early on methodology kind of things. Like there's some things that kind of, it sounds like they emerged from what you're talking about, where it's just like, okay, I can't do this, otherwise, dad won't be able to get on the internet, and that'll be bad. I can't, just, tinker all the time. I got to choose when I'm doing it and that sort of thing. And then, learning to, it sounds like a lot of learning to help others along the way.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the biggest, I would say always, even to this day, the biggest draw for me in technology. I think there's a space definitely to be, the end all be all technologist and know every detail about how every piece of technology you're working with works. But then there's that whole other space, that I think, people like us that work with these technologies in the end user computing space are well accustomed to, this being the norm, that we're actually interfacing with people that aren't as technical and having to explain, these technical concepts and how they can do their work on these technical devices, to people that are non-technical or people that don't have that as their first, their first language, so to speak. Right. So that to me was always the thing that I thought was the coolest part of this job, was being able to see that spark in other people's eyes, when they got the concepts that made sense to me. Right. It's very similar, when you're in school and you're learning math and, something looks really hard when you first start hearing the lecture from the teacher. But once, you start to get the concepts and it all starts to make sense, that clicks. That is a really enlightening experience, and I think that's been one of the best parts of this job for me, is really just seeing that and helping bring those technologies, to people. Right. And so I would say before I ever got into Citrix, that was kind of my in technology, is really making technology approachable to everybody else that doesn't work with technology every day. And I would say to this day, I've been in technology and built a career working with Citrix and related technologies, for 15 years now. But through all of that, that has never changed. Right. That's the number one, I would say, key aspect to what I do that brings me the most, fulfillment and joy. But also, I would say the biggest benefit, I would say, that our space, specifically with these end user computing technologies, fills for other people, is it puts people like us, as the guides, with people to help bridge that gap, right, between what is traditionally seen as IT and the rest of the user community.
How did that progression evolve for you? So as far as like going from, the person that was just, helping out or whatever, and then getting to, let's say, Citrix, for example. It always seems to be, with a lot of people we talk to, there's always some key thing that's just right? It's like the big thing that happens. First off, let's say hello to Tech Guy. And awesome. Looks like I had all sorts of problems this morning. Our little thing that usually displays chat messages on the screen is not working today. Wow, this is just got a host of
it's fine.
things. But
we'll
let's
do it
walk
live. We'll do it live.
Yeah. So let's walk through some of the just kind of either career progressions or things you wanted to do that like brought you towards Citrix, for example, as that key bit of technology for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say the first time I ever encountered the technology that, Citrix really embodies, that remote access, virtualization of desktops and apps, right? That type of a concept was from Citrix, actually. I had an aunt who was doing IT for a forklift manufacturer here in the Chicago area. And, at the time I was going to DeVry to get a network and communications bachelor degree. And my last class in that was kind of a senior project type class. And so I had been working with her on, creating a website for their business. And, just through that process, I got access to the server room. I got access to see what they were doing, but they were actually using Citrix to project, their kind of ERP system displays out onto the shop floor for all of the manufacturing people. And then they also had terminals, thin clients out on the shop floor that connected back into presentation servers. And this was before I even knew what Citrix was, before I had any concept of these technologies. I saw it for, being used, right? And so then through that process, just talking to her, hearing about it, thinking about it, I was invested. I think my focus at that time was invested in all of IT, just generalization, like making websites, setting up servers, all of the things that go into IT. But it kind of sat with me to the point that, I got actually through DeVry, through the senior outreach, the kind of the alumni program. They would come back and give people sort of internships, in their businesses after they left, to people that were in school, right? And so I submitted my application to that and found a guy who was running a manufacturing plant also in the Chicago area. But their use case was a little bit more interesting in that they had a facility, the headquarters facility was in Illinois. They had their kind of engineers, doing CAD work and things like that on these, products that they were manufacturing. They were based in New York. And then they actually had the manufacturing facility in China. And so because of that, and this is going back to 2005, they had one T1 at the main office, right? They had low bandwidth, obviously. The big thing that they were again doing manufacturing was ERP. And they were using a manufacturing program that had, just the most terrible back-end protocol to where, if you tried to put that thing, a different switch, it wasn't going to work, right? So let alone putting that out in New York over a T1 and having, a bunch of engineers accessing it, people coming in from China back then, so Citrix was, kind of a good fit there, but they didn't even have any of that. So they were just struggling through the symptoms of that problem without the solution. And so we started talking very quickly about, what I had seen at my aunt's business. And, then I started actually saying, okay, maybe I could do this, right? And so I learned, I would say over the space of a weekend about terminal servers, right? 2003 terminal servers. I have a book that I purchased way back then when that was the thing that you did to learn about new technologies. And I absorbed it, right? And I was really like, okay, we're going to do this. And we set up a terminal server, in the main headquarters location. And, they already had the VPN site-to-site connectivity set up. So, we just distributed the documentation and made sure everybody could get on. And boom, they were in business, right? And it was like overnight we solved the problem back in 2005 that, still to this day, when you solve problems like that, brings a lot of, just happy people, right? And so I think that was, for me, what really did it for me. It was just seeing how quickly you can solve problems by just thinking about them a little differently and trying new technologies that maybe not everybody's solving the problem this way, but it definitely has promise. And I think as a technologist, that's one of the things that we all share is when you see something that works, that makes sense, that sticks out. And for me, that was the case, right? So the first time I worked with a terminal server, I was sold. And then from there, I graduated from DeVry. I got a job working for a company that, was a three-person consulting firm. Their main business was a accounting shop, and very similar use case there where they had the main office and then they had a bunch of branch offices. They had an accounting software that, was very clunky, very heavy over the network. And so, there again, terminal servers, or it was presentation server 4 back then in 2006. I got the job of being like the internal guy managing that, right? And so the other two guys on the team, they knew it already. They taught it to me, right? The concepts, and then I, very quickly became the guy that was managing that. And so from there, I think the doors just started opening up, right? Once you put Citrix or, VDI or any of these technologies on your resume, or you get some experience with them, it's a small world, right? So I think that really is where, again, it just proliferated from there. To take a page out of Carl Webster's book, I in some way became the accidental Citrix admin also, just because it wasn't something that I set out saying this is what I'm going to do. But as I started to just be an IT guy working and looking for jobs and things like that, those were the opportunities that started to come up. And then again, you just build and expand on things. So what you succeed at, you build on that success, and that's kind of how I followed my career since then.
Yeah, honestly, I think there's some elements there that are really kind of cool. And they feel accidental, but I guess I've gotten a different view these days where I can see just inevitability with that. I want to key in on one thing you kind of talked about there, and that is that you saw a need and then you keyed in on a solution to that need. The funny thing about that is that level of proactivity is actually somewhat unusual in the IT market. Sometimes when we just have that mindset, we take that for granted. But that is something that I absolutely am trying to figure out how to cultivate in others, because that to me is a really big key on getting to a point of not just like success as far as like having a good job or making the right money, but just being happier about what you do, because you have a why you're doing it. And so I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that. Like what do you think kind of nurtured that in you, that kind of solutions oriented thinking?
I mean, so I guess, there's the whole aspect of life that there's certain things obviously that, you have them coming into the thing, right? So I think that I built on certain strengths that I had, certain personality traits that, I would say were there long before I ever even started working with computers, right? Just as a kid, interacting with other kids or going to school, right? There's opportunities to step up and take leadership positions, or just to lead a group of people, that you're working with together towards a common goal. I think that kind of aspect of, people's personalities really is a big part of this, because, again, to take the page out of Carl Webster's book, back when we were all getting into, end user computing or Citrix or all that, it wasn't really a well accepted niche area, right? It was something that people using it understood the value of it, but really just even convincing that next level of your colleagues that, hey, we should be doing this, or this is going to work, or this is going to solve all these other problems we're not even thinking about yet. That was the first battle, right? And so I think even the willingness to be that person, to put yourself out there, come on a podcast, talk about things that, maybe I didn't know what we were going to talk about when we came into this, right? I sent over a list of things that I thought maybe we'd talk about. I threw memes on there because it's what I like to do. But, at the end of the day, you really just have to be comfortable with, the unknown, I think. And so that to me was always the biggest aspect of it. Because even myself, I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend like, again, I knew what I was going to be doing today 15 years ago. But at that time, I was like, this is great. And I don't understand why, colleague, you're not believing me when I'm trying. So I just set out personally as an own personal, for my own fulfillment, to see if I could solve certain problems, to see if I could grow, to see if I could achieve certain things. And I think that obviously is step one for anybody to do anything, is to have that, the why. It has to be there, right? And I think for me, I've been through, I think we could spend, hours talking about different aspects of life, and I could tell stories there to just, give some context of where my thinking comes from. But I think I've overcome a lot of things outside of like the career aspect, personally, that have set me up to be able to take some of these challenges on personally. And again, I think a lot of what we're talking about now is water under the bridge, because 2020, what we've all lived through this year with, a lot of the challenges organizations have had to solve, I think it's bringing what we do now front and center and proving the value, without anybody having to make that argument, right? It's just inherently there. People see the value and they can see the use cases, and I kind of run its trajectory from there, right? But I think back before that, before you get to that, okay, we've made it, there's a lot of that uncertainty that you have to be comfortable with dealing with. And that, I think,
ways,
to me, has been the biggest here,
in a lot of ways, I kind of view this as, it's like the 1980s all over again. When computers really became, viewed as, okay, this is going to be important and we need to find somebody to do this. And the people that did know how to do it, or quickly discovered how to do it, kind of, there was that danger of them becoming kind of pariahs. And actually not in danger. That was a reality. A lot of them really did become just
Mhm.
kind of awful people, you know, that really just was, a lot of just not good stuff going on. We don't think about like kind of the dark side of what working in IT kind of bore for a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of, broken marriages. There was a lot of, drug and alcohol addiction and things like that. And really, I think a big piece of that is, they had disconnected the joy of figuring things out and working with technology and something that was a hobby suddenly became a career, and that career had expectations. And so sometimes I think is really important that we recognize and nurture and not just think of the past just as something that is just back there, but recognize that there are elements outside of the technology that we can bring forward for people and help. And telling those stories really actually helps quite a bit. I mean, it helps with me, for sure. And a lot of people have resonated with, where I've come from and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I never want to shy away from stories like that, because it's always valuable for the people that aren't there yet, that really want to know, okay, what is it going to
Mhm.
take, and realizing that you can have a passion for the technology, but if you don't have a purpose for that passion, if there's not a why behind it, then there's trouble brewing. I mean, while a lot of people can go ahead and make a career, for example, that the problem becomes, okay, now what? And there's always that next thing, and then on top of that, stack a bunch of expectations that employers are having or customers are having and that sort of thing, and it can chew people up really fast. And so, um, so that makes me curious, like if there's anything specific you can kind of dive into, without getting overly personal. That's not necessary, but just, are there any theme areas you can think of? Any things that pop out in your mind of saying, you know what, that really was what kind of forced me to stop thinking only of myself and to think about, solutions, to other people's problems, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me, obviously, that has changed my perspective and just giving me that kind of ability to, really live for other people has been, the experience of becoming a father. And then really,
Yeah.
I have uh, three sons now. Our third son, um, right after he was born with a condition called bilirubinemia, which is essentially where bilirubin levels are really high in your blood, and that it could lead to essentially to seizures and brain damage for infants, right? And so,
Right.
um, very peaceful, completely normal, healthy, happy birth, but this happened basically 2-3 days later, right? And so you go through that experience of really, the best thing that can possibly happen to you, birth of a child, turning very quickly within the space of 48 hours into potentially the worst thing that can happen to you, right? And so for me, I had lived as a father and as a man, before that for a long time. Obviously, seeing the virtue in helping others, right? And that always being something that I personally cared about doing, right? Just in my upbringing and other things. But really at that moment became, my entire life stopped for 3 days while we were in the hospital with him, just living for that next moment, right? And so I think going through something like that, just personally outside of your career, again, I feel like that to me really changed the trajectory for me personally, to where sure and planning and, okay, this is just temporary. I'm going to be there, 5 years, and went really to taking nothing for granted after that, and just really living for the experience of every day and trying to live that day to the fullest and really try to bring joy to the people that are immediately around me. Right. And so I say my first job is being a dad. Right. And that to me is always
Yeah.
going to be the first job for me. And so I think wherever I go in life, that's going to be the first thing for me forever on. Whereas before that, that was not the first thing for me. And I think that singular experience definitely did it for me in a way that nothing else has. And, just to step back, I say, I had come from a childhood that was, working class family, living in a rough area, I would say, just experiencing a lot of what the 80s and 90s, life had to bring. I think, there's plenty of content on the internet to go into what life was like for people back then, but I certainly experienced some hardships that, I think when you when you face hardships in life, you can really just only decide how you're going to face them, right? You really can't choose when those challenges are going to arise in life, and you can't really choose what the variables are in that situation, but your attitude, and also, just how you reflect on the outcome of certain situations that you had no control over. I think that dictates everything in life. And when I think back to the situations I've been in, especially in my early life, and compare those to other situations that even I faced later in life and how I didn't respond in the right way necessarily, and just learning and reflecting on those different aspects of, what I've done in my life, how I've reacted, and how that played out. Just having that time to look back and actually look at those things and try to understand them. I think, that's what's gotten me to that point, before I had that experience with my son. Looking around at other people, struggling with things that I know I'm struggling with or I had struggled with, and just wanting to try to lighten the load for those people, right? That's always been something that I think, just from childhood, right? The way that I was raised, through just, the basic things that we talk about that we learn in preschool, right? Be nice to other people, treat other people the way you want to be treated. Those, I would say I took the lessons from those things, at various stages of life that helped me. But I think to your point is the biggest lesson for me, especially in recent years, is just staying humble, right? Because to your point, it's really easy when you have success to let that success go to your head, right? So you do something and then, it's, hey, that went well, right? And then if you do it again and it goes even better and you're building on that success and you figure out, hey, I've got a mechanism here, I've got something that can work out in my advantage, it's very easy to just let that, become the thing that you do and coast on that, right? And not really take all of those aspects of yourself that got you to that point where you found that easy button and keep using those things to keep moving forward, right? Instead of taking those strengths and, using those, and you're almost giving into your weaknesses, right? And not trying as hard, right? And so I think things start to slide by the wayside for anybody that does that takes that path in life. And I've certainly been no stranger to take that path. And I think for me, again, it's a constant battle to stay on the path, right? So I think it's something that every day you have to take time to reevaluate. Is this what I want to be doing with myself? Am I happy with what I'm doing with myself, right? So is the work that I'm doing allowing me to do good work, right? I think that's a big part of it that you made the point of being, making a career of something. I think it's certainly easy once you have made a career of something to just keep doing that, right? And that, again, I think that just bears out, right? You can see that in the things that you're doing with yourself and the people around you, what they're doing, to understand how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of our tenets in this show is mindset, and I think that really does kind of key into what you were just saying is it's fine to work, but if you are working for a reason, not towards some whatever goal, but if there's something bigger to it, then you're much more likely to actually be successful as well. It's not it's this weird dynamic that our nature and then the world kind of speaks against that in some ways, like okay, you have to go get it yourself because nobody's going to get it for you and that sort of thing. And that's our nature. What we don't realize is that the more we give away, the more we actually end up getting in the long run anyway. And so having that mindset of leaving the world better than you found it, it's that kindergarten poster, like everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten kind of concept that I took that from. And actually, I remember talking to my gosh, Mark Templeton back in, I don't know, 2015, 2016, something like that. And, he had said that concept from the stage. And I was like, hey, that's my life mission, man. And so he just started tearing up, and, it was like kind of a cool connection moment. But those things matter, it really is kind of important. So awesome. Well, if you're just joining us, we are talking to Nick Prignano. I'm going to try and get it right.
Prignano.
It's all good.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back with Nick in a moment. What I'm going to do right now is I promised you something kind of special. So I'm going to let him take a quick break, and we'll be back with him and talk more about kind of the future, about what's coming and that sort of thing. So let's see here. So let me hide you. And I want to show you guys something cool that happened on the 27th. So that would be Tuesday. I was actually able to get a shipment of books. Let me make this full screen here, if I can. Let me take care. You, which is kind of cool. So I can actually sign a copy of this book and send it to you as a personalized copy. Now, the cool thing is, we just discovered this yesterday, is that we can actually personalize these books overseas now. Now, I can't sign it physically, but what we can do is give you a personalized and electronically signed. And so, in other words, it's like a copy of my signature, basically, and a little picture and a message for you that personalizes the book for you. And that's something that we can do, which is really exciting, and it's really kind of cool for the people that are yeah, I wanted something to be able to give to people as a special for especially viewers of this show, or just anybody who's buying it. Now, I can't do that through Amazon. I just want to be clear about that. So like the paperback version is not really possible, but the hardcover edition is something that I can do. And so what we have for you is actually a little bit of a special combo. And so we have the obviously Just Do This as a personalized copy sent out to you, like personalized by me. And then what we also have is Be a Citrix Hero, which is my first book. And that is going to be available in that kind of as a bundle. Now, whether they're in the same exact time frame kind of depends on a few factors about where you live, but this is something we're bundling together, and we are now able to do this internationally. This was a challenge. This was US only before, but we've figured out how to do this internationally. And so now we're able to do that. So let me give you a link and a QR code you can scan here. So let's see here. Yeah, so it's going to be $48, which is the cost of Just Do This as a personalized copy. For all, there's actually 3 books if you're in the US. There is Dan Miller's 48 Days to the Work You Love. You can see I've still got a few copies up there to give out as well. So if that is something that you are interested in, I would love to send you those. $48 is the cost, including shipping. So that's something that is there for you. So in order to get that, it is thrive-it.com/book bundle. Again, that's thrive-it.com/book bundle. And that is our special for you. Not sure how long I'm going to run this. It's probably going to be at least for the next month or so. But what we'll do is we'll always update the link, whatever bundle offer we have, we'll put that in there for you. And it's just my pleasure to be doing this. It's unreal, frankly, that this is something that I'm actually doing, that I'm actually a published author, and that I'm actually able to do this. And so I'm happy to do this. And there's a lot of bonuses and things like that with the book too. We could talk about the book all day, because that's kind of what I've been doing lately. But anyway, wanted to get you that bundle. That's our special today. And the other thing I wanted to announce to you is that tomorrow we are actually going to be doing a special broadcast. And so join us once again. If you're not subscribed to the channel, this is a good point to do that, so you can catch these little impromptu kind of things. But make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you get that update. We'll update, social media as well. But the special thing we're doing is actually a 6-month anniversary. Tomorrow will be the 6-month anniversary of the first THRIVEcast. And so we are yeah, very pleased to bring you a special kind of retrospective. We're putting out invites to Nick and to all the other guests that have been on to join us live. We'll have a special format for that. And so I'm hoping lots of people are able to, but if not, we'll just hang out and have ourselves a little happy hour and celebrate 6 months of THRIVEcast. And I want to thank all of you for allowing that to happen and to being there and being faithful and to watching the show either live or catching the replay afterwards. It's been great. So I do appreciate that. Well, let's get back in with Nick and let's talk a little bit more about, well, let's just talk maybe some community stuff you're doing right now. Obviously, there's Citrix User Group Community, CUGC, and things like that. So how did that kind of get started for you? What was the impetus for you not only joining CUGC, but also signing up as a leader?
Yeah, so I think CUGC, I think, is a bright spot in all of this, from a industry perspective. That was one of the things that, I can't take credit for starting the Chicago chapter of CUGC, but, and the reason I can't take credit is because Sean Bass, who's the CTO or VP for end user computing at VMware, but he essentially was the Citrix User Group Community before he joined VMware. And he showed up to our first meeting to tell us that, he had tried for a long time to get Citrix to let him set it up. So I was, completely honored. Obviously, I had that kind of like celebrity moment where I'd never met him in person before. So it was a little daunting. But for me, it was really, again, I like just, getting to know people. I like people. That's one of the things about life that I look forward to is just meeting new people, getting to know people, building relationships with people. So for me, it was always surprising when, I would try to just talk to people about Citrix, people that we worked with, people that worked at Citrix at the time. People were very closed about talking about technology or talking about Citrix specifically. It was kind of like an elitist, I don't want to say elitist, but there was a special club of people that did it in the community, right? And some of those people I think are still at the tops of the community. And there was a certain kind of attitude where it was like, okay, closed off from people that were younger, getting into the, the field of IT that were, really excited about what was happening. And I recognized that, right? There were people at Citrix that I had developed relationships with, and we had kind of an informal, I think we called it the Architects Council in the Chicagoland area. That people that were doing this job, right? The consultants, the architects, they would get together once a quarter just to have basically, it was a precursor to CUGC, right? So just like a CUGC meeting, no blue shirts, no signs, but the same idea, right? Just get technologists together, have a good time, and build that relationship. Because again, it is a really small global community that we have here. But in a certain extent, we're the people, the representatives, for the technology and for the brand at a certain extent anyways, just being the people in the area doing the technology, right? So that to me, when that announcement was made at the 2015 Synergy, I was not at that Synergy. I was home working on projects or something, but as soon as I heard about it, I think it was on Twitter, or something like that, I started reaching out, right? There was they had the website set up and you had to basically do like a petition in the beginning. They had one chapter that had set up based on Synergy at 2015. That was New York. And so we were, I think, the second chapter to open, right? Because as soon as that thing came out, I had been saying for a long time, like, this should be official. It should be global. Everybody should be participating in this. There's going to be a special crew of people that have special access. Like, that's not what this should be about. Because that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help me as the architect inside that special circle of people that doesn't have access to all the other people working with the technology outside of there. Right. And so that was my thinking at the time. So as soon as I just volunteered, right? And I've been that kind of a person, like we talked about before, where I see opportunities and I'll just, I'll throw myself at them, right? I don't hesitate usually, try to go with that default aggressive mindset when I see something that makes sense. If it clicks, my intuition screaming at me, and I try to go after it. And so that's really all. And then, my colleague in founding it, David Sharp, he's also been around for a long time. He's part of the VMUG community as well. He had that kind of experience level, right? So he had, maybe 10, 15 years of experience at this point and had a lot of experience helping out with VMUG. He and I partnered to get that set up because in the beginning of CUGC, and I think you probably were involved very early on as well, there wasn't a lot of the structure that's there now, right? A lot of the people that are here now were not there, right? And so a lot of it was just make it work on our own. It was kind of like, having a party in high school or college where you just talk to a bunch of your friends and say, hey, let's meet here at this time. Let's get this, some drinks and some food and just do it, right? And so we made that happen, I would say, for like the first, year, maybe even until that 2016 Synergy where we had that first official event. All the leaders together, all the groups and all that. A lot of it was just making it happen, right? And so that's really what got me going with that. And right away, the feedback that we got, both from the people running CUGC as well as, the people that were actually participating in the events, as well as Citrix and our partners that we were getting to sponsor the events, was just, this is great. This is what we've needed. It gets us out of that, okay, sit down, watch the PowerPoint, buy something, don't buy something, and that's it, right? So it was forming those relationships, getting people to know each other, know the faces, have somebody that you can reach out to. I think it was one of the biggest things that came out of like this move to community is just giving people that ability to reach out to each other, right? Decentralization of the knowledge and, the people and all of that, right? So I think just like all of the benefits of the internet, we benefited from that as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been doing it now for 5 years and we have a team of people. So we've got 5 people technically that, that help us run it, just for our Chicago chapter, right? So it's myself, David Sharp, Chris Bonner, David Zolnach, right? And then we've got Ashfaq Iqbal from Citrix, who, he's been there from day one and has helped us to make that successful, right? Again, just because we all believe in this and we all care about it.
Yeah, that's great. How many people do you have in your CGC chapter in Chicagoland area there these days?
I used to like to brag that we had the largest one in America. So it was over 330 the last I checked. Now, as far as the events, you get a consistent 30 people that show up to the events when they're in person. We got more now in the virtual space, right? And that's kind of the next frontier of all this, is going to more of the, like, the podcast, the virtual hangouts type thing where we can engage people more often, get people together more often, but still have that kind of same experience, that kind of same feel that we had before all of, these new things started happening, these new trends in technology, right? This is definitely becoming, I think, a vital part of what we do. Because I think back to when before 2020, I was working from home a lot already, right? And going back to when I got into IT consulting in 2013, I've been working, mostly from home since then. Just because of the nature of the work that I'm doing. I'm working with, many different customers and groups, they're all over the country, perhaps all over the world. Me being in a physical office, that cuts down on the amount of time that I have in that day.
Yeah.
If the only reason I'm going to an office is to answer emails and join meetings, then that's time that I'm losing in the day, right? So long time ago, we figured out, hey, we can use these same technologies, eat our own dog food, benefit from these things that we're, telling other people they can benefit from the same way, right? So we have been, but back then, even I was looking forward to, the once or twice a month that I had to leave to go to an in-person meeting, where I actually had to have a room full of people to do a workshop, to design a solution, right? Something like that. That was the bright spot in that kind of isolation world that we had before, right? And so we all used our social media tools the same way that we do now, but that physical contact, even, face-to-face conversations like this, where we can see each other, there's that level of human aspect that you don't get when you're talking on the phone to somebody, right? So I think, nowadays, things like this are going to become extremely important. And, one of the great things about CUGC, like I said before, is they have people that figured all these things out already and had these things in place when this came along. That, we were doing a virtual event in March, and then we had our virtual XL, event in the spring as well, right? And all that stuff went off fantastically without a hitch, because we had these things figured out beforehand. And I think, again, as this extends, as this is the world for a while, nobody knows when this is all going to be figured out. We can expect to have these types of events, for a long time, perhaps forever, right? So I think, that's
this element. It's kind of weird. I'm hoping to see some sort of a hybrid approach be more popular, and I think that was something we early on with CUGC. Actually, technically, this goes back for me even earlier than that, when we were doing the Colorado Citrix User Club, I think we called it. It was a different thing. It was actually kind of sponsored by Citrix there in the Denver area, loosely. And format was largely the same. We'd have like a sponsor, and have food and drinks and that sort of thing, and talk tech and things like that. And we toyed around with the idea of having virtual broadcasts, like of doing that. In fact, we tried for a while, but back in 2006, 2007, it wasn't quite as good as it is now, where we have much more immersive experiences. And so that's something where I'm really hoping to see kind of a hybrid, because I think that face to face is really kind of the better experience. But at the same time, I'm really hoping to see some way to elevate that experience, to bring people in. What we've seen with a lot of these conferences lately is that people that weren't able to attend for whatever host of reasons are able to attend these things now.
Mhm.
Now getting them to actually participate, that's probably the next step, and that's kind of where I'm wanting to I'm always wanting to push the envelope, I guess. But uh, there's this notion of, okay, so we've got all these capabilities now, and we're practiced, right? We've been doing this for some time now, so why can't we just do something that's a little more hybridized? And there's back and forth on that, but I'm really hoping to see more of that. In fact, this is something too where I'll throw up something on the screen here. We have a survey out there, thrive-it.com/survey. We are still looking for some feedback and ideas on doing a virtual event for the EUC community in general. So this would be more of an EUC summit. And so what we're hoping to do is figure out not just a way to have people present and things like that, which is always going to be important. And we'll have, obviously, presentations in those 4 key areas that we have, but also just to have that level of interactivity. So I'd love for people to put feedback in there about like what elements of that are important, what times of day work best for them for this kind of a summit, what kind of general format. We think we have some ideas, but we're always wanting to gather more information. So that survey remains open. So thrive-it.com/survey. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point too. That kind of
I think I lost your audio there for a second, or froze you up here. Let's give that a second to.
people are resisting. Oh,
This is the other joy of virtually meeting.
Let it catch up. So
internet decides.
Yeah.
That it's
so yeah,
be,
this is the world we're in now, right? I think.
Yeah.
CUGC, I think, well positioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think CUGC was in a really good position already before all this stuff started, because we had already seen there was it's hard to get a bunch of people together in the same place all at the same time for long periods of time, on the other side of the country or the world, depending on what your community is, right? So
even in a metro area,
moving to this, yeah, for sure, right? Even on a same team, right? Even get 2 people on a Zoom call right at the same time can be challenging. So I think that the move to again, decentralization of the community and like putting that closer to where the people are, that shift had already started before, right? So we saw like big events like reInvent. They had huge logistics problems with the number of people that all wanted to be at that one event. Kind of pushed a shift to like the roadshow style events where this wasn't just something that one vendor was doing, everybody was doing it, but really being in that position to where people got into that mode of expecting to get that content from their local event, as opposed to waiting till once a year to go through those experiences. I think it opens up a lot of possibilities also in that format, right? And so I think that if you see how a lot of organizations and governments have responded to opening things back up, that push to local, the smaller group size, right, the more frequent informal type stuff, I think is going to have a big play, in the future once we start to move back into the physical space, right, as opposed to trying again to get everybody back in one place. The logistical nightmare of that in the new world with all these new concerns, I think is even makes it even less likely that you would see huge events like that going forward, right? So I'm really excited about when that time comes, we start seeing those types of things happening, to really to be able to be a part of that, right? And that to me is an exciting thing, is to really be part of that community, however the community finds itself, right? That's always been for me, is really just being a part of it, and being my best self, being a part of that has always been my thing. And that's the same thing with this, right? So when we talk about the future, that's kind of how I see CUGC going.
Yeah, I love it, man. This is like, well, yeah, we can talk about and speculate on technology things, and that's actually kind of easy in an odd sort of way. Predicting people, man, that's kind of a different science altogether. But honestly, I feel the same way, that this is the kind of the new wave, and this is kind of where I think things were actually already heading, and so we were already raising our level of preparedness for that. So I think it's actually kind of cool that this is it. And I don't want to celebrate, a lot of things about this, but the honest truth is, a lot of times we need a big challenge to really push us to a new and better level. And I think that's exactly what we're facing throughout this crisis. And you know, there's something about knowing that it's not going to be here forever, but that we can start putting things in place that are beneficial to the future. Now, just reacting to the moment, that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. I mean, if you start pinning your strategies on reactions, that will blow up in your face every single time. But if you start to say, there's some elements of this that make sense for the long term, let's go ahead and start working towards those. That makes a lot of sense. So in a way, kind of speaking about that, I did want to talk about kind of the cloud desktop kind of thing, and how you see, obviously, what we're facing right now with the pandemic and all that has been forcing the issue with this a lot faster. But it's not like we weren't prepared. Like you were saying before, we actually we're already heading this direction. So talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you see with the future of cloud desktops and things like that? What are your perspectives on that?
So yeah, I mean, I personally, in the work that I do day to day, I have been fortunate enough to work on a lot of exciting projects, especially early on. Especially, like with the Amazon Workspaces world. I would say they were, kind of the early winner in that space, right? Getting a service out there that people could quickly consume desktops just by swiping their credit card, right? And so, that matured in a big way over time, I would say, definitely, in the last several years, to where, I've worked with customers personally, and helped customers to get to, 5,000 concurrent desktops running on Amazon Workspaces. I mean, to me, that's great news. That's a huge accomplishment. I think when I think back to the size of projects that I worked with before cloud, right, that was a very daunting ask to get to that level of, number of desktops running successfully, all things considered, right? And so I think certainly over time, we've seen these technologies prove themselves out. But to your point, I think this is a trend in the space, right? But, trends are trends. So I think it's something that, as we move out of what we've experienced this year, you're going to see people that continue to invest in the technologies that they've been investing in, right? And cloud now becomes one of those technologies, right? So I think it's become an option in a way that maybe some people in the past would never consider it. There's definitely use cases where it's a fit, right? And when I have conversations from time to time with people, that have especially proven themselves in the EUC space previously, right, long ago, and like we talked about before, staying humble, I think that's a big thing, is because, these technologies, they're just further evolutions of the technologies that we've been working with for, the entire time, right? So I don't think that anything that's happening in any of these spaces is this massive disruptor, maybe that some people want to talk about, right? But it's certainly also not a fad, right? It's not going to go away. It's going to expand. It has proven out, and there's use cases where sometimes the cloud native desktop is the better option, right? I think we could have a long-ranging discussion to go into detail of use cases and stories from the field and things like that. And I don't think this is the right platform for that. I'd love to make a platform out of talking about things just like that, right? Because I have, over the last 3 years, working with customers that have some of the biggest on-prem IT environments, looking at cloud as a solution for a specific use case. In 2020, the number one thing that we heard from people why they were looking at cloud was because of just capacity, right? Logistical issues, the speed to respond rapidly to the conditions in the market, right? Whatever those conditions may be. This year was the pandemic. Next year it could be something else. But having that tool at your disposal, I think it's great that it's there, right? And so I think again, I think it's real easy to get caught up in the hype of things, and I think that's obviously a danger that everybody is susceptible to in technology, especially. So it's something that obviously, when you've spent enough time working with technologies, nothing is it works that way, right? There's a lot of hype around every new technology, and the ones that are good will stick around, and the ones that aren't, they're going to fizzle out and go away, right? So I think to that point, that's definitely how I see the future going, right? There's definitely lots of people that are really excited about cloud, and there's lots of people that aren't really excited about cloud, right? And so I think you're going to have enough room for both of those trends and those ways of working and those ways of deploying desktops and applications to continue to percolate into the future, just because of the trends we saw coming out of this year taking center stage for everybody, right? So these things that we've been talking about for 15, 20 plus years, now everybody's understanding them. The proof is in the pudding, right? And so there's going to be plenty of room for all of these technologies to grow, expand, and get better as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it's kind of funny how the use cases haven't really changed as much as we think. There's
true.
still that same, like you mentioned, ERP software, that sort of thing. Those realities haven't changed. It's not like a virtual distance actually makes things worse with a lot of applications. And so, there's a lot of things that are like the latest toy, the latest thing, deploy WVD because it's everything for everybody. That's not going to work out. But if there's a good reason and a good way to do it, with a hybrid approach or with actually getting your applications in the cloud right alongside your desktops, then that makes sense. But it's kind of one of those things where the fundamentals really haven't changed that much. There's still a need for being designful as far as that goes, and saying, okay, this is actually something we need to take a full look at, like from the business, what priorities they have, look at the capabilities we have to meet those needs, and then look at the best ways to do that. The balances all of those equations. That's still going to be at the core of everything we do with the cloud. If we forget that, then it becomes much worse. You let how did that somebody had a word for describing accountants that I thought was pretty creative, but if they are allowed to turn the screws too tightly, then everything falls apart. But at the same time, you don't want to just be foolish with what you're spending either. So there's all these balance points, and it's going to take people that are truly mindful of all these things and want to make good solutions, not just good toys. Yeah, it's going to be a big thing. And also, something that came up recently in a conversation I didn't feel good about and exited as rapidly as I could. Basically implying that people should get into WVD for the opportunity for their career.
Well, I would ask, which people are we talking to, right? So
I'm not giving names, but this is one of those.
What audience are we talking to, right? Because every challenge and every new thing is an opportunity for the right person. So I think certainly there's people out there that will probably come to VDI and virtual desktops and applications through cloud native solutions, right? I work with people every day whose background is cloud only, and that we get them up to speed very quickly on the concepts of end user computing that all of us have been working with on every platform and before there were platforms, right? So those things, to your point, those use cases don't change. Those best practices, those lessons learned, all of those things still exist. And, WVD is just a new way to do that, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think the thing about WVD for me, that I think about, I had a partner that I worked with at a certain point, collaborating on, just providing services for customers. And he brought up the point that, they were a competing business, but we were essentially, collaborating with them to deliver services for a joint customer. And I was initially really concerned with, engaging with a partner for that space because of, again, the idea of, okay, well, if I have the relationship with this customer and I work with someone else, well, then what happens there, right? So, but he set me at ease because he said, the way I look at this is a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if you look at the trends that are happening in our space because of Microsoft moving into this direction with the and creating this space inside of Microsoft for these technologies and the moves they've made in that space, I think those have had down level benefits for everybody doing these things, right? And again, the point I made earlier about, just bringing new people to the fold, I think this is a great opportunity to have that conversation with people that are solving problems every day right now, right, in the Azure space or in the cloud space in general, right? How do we work with and collaborate with those people to solve more problems, to make things better for everybody, and to bring these things into the fold, right? So Microsoft from day one has had that partner-focused approach to all of this, better together, right? So everybody's working together. There's that Lighthouse program that they had early on, and to help develop solutions for joint customers to help people be successful. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? We're trying to help people accomplish objectives. We're outcome focused, right? Everybody, has an opinion. They have their own personal beliefs on things and their own personal skill sets and strengths and weaknesses. But at the end of the day, it's about the outcome, right? So I think that when you set your sights on that, whether that's working with a competitor, working with a partner, a vendor, working with your customers, that that outcome mindset is going to make a huge difference in just achieving that outcome, right? If you guys can set your sights at the same goal and work towards that, it's going to make a huge difference for everybody getting there. That's been my experience. Yeah. So I think in this space, I've seen that kind of trend from how all of this has been approached, and that's why I'm on the internet. I've got my voice out there. I go to these meetings. I talk to people. I am excited about it, but that's the reason I'm excited about it is because we're all improving through this, right? The things with FS Logics, the improvements there. Giving that stuff away to people or including it in the licensing that people are already paying for, that approach to things makes it easier for people to even consider doing things that maybe they can't without those types of moves, right? So I think for me, that's why I've been excited since day one. I had posters on my wall of the RDMI architecture that they had put out at Ignite, back in 2018 when they first started talking about this. And then they changed the name to WVD last year, right? And just seeing how that's going, just as a personal, just being someone who's been in this space, and then someone who worked in the workspaces world, helping customers to build out Amazon Workspace and AppStream, and then moving into, that area, right? It's just kind of a natural progression of things. And again, it's all a running theme of what are we trying to accomplish here? And that's, right, virtual apps and desktops, that's systems management, right? We haven't really, in this conversation, talked a lot about that, but, our world is really rapidly changing from, if I think about the image that Brian Madden drew on that Lightboard video that he did going back about a year ago, right after he came to VMware, where he talks about, we all used to think about EUC being these couple things over here. How do we manage apps and desktops? And then maybe some files, right? Like to being all these other things with the systems management, with the endpoints, getting into monitoring and analytics, all of that stuff, right? So I think the world is changing, the world is growing, and this is just right in line with that, right? And so I think that excitement that's where that excitement comes in for me, right? I like things that go well, and this is going well.
Indeed. And having the right mindset about that is the main point I was making, is like, if you're just in it for the opportunity itself, just to use it and move on, then I don't know if this is the right thing. But if this is something you want to commit to as a solution you want to build out for people, then yeah, absolutely, that's the right thing. So cool. Well, believe it or not, we are actually over an hour. So yeah. So Nick, I wanted to give you any of the last thoughts, or tell people how they can follow you and find you online.
Yeah, so CUGC Chicago, we're planning a meeting December 9th. That's going to be another go-to meeting. So we don't have our speaker lined up yet, but that'll be good. So that'll be a virtual thing. You can get to that through the CUGC website. I'm on Twitter at Prignano, generally talking about IT-related stuff on there. Also, shout out to Jen Sheeran's WVD user group. So she's running that. There's definitely an opportunity to, kind of just stay connected and be part of that informal community, right? So CUGC is a formal community, but that WVD user group community is just informal. So shout out for that. I will definitely participate in many of those as possible. And then, yeah, just watch out for big things in the space from ahead. We've got some exciting news that we just put out. We've joined forces with Round Tower and Kavaris. And Round Tower had a very esteemed name for themselves in that user computing space, that they had accomplished, and we are going to be expanding on that in big ways ahead. So I'm extremely excited about what next year has in store on that front, and just keep your eyes on that space.
Awesome, man. Thanks for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, DJ. This has been great. This is my first podcast I've ever participated in. I'm really excited about joining the new digital age. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
In the bag. First one down. It's always the hardest one. So, yeah.
If I ever have one, you're going to be my first guest.
All right. Sounds that you got a deal.
Deal.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us. I'm going to kick you back into the green room, and we'll be back with you in a moment.
Thank you.
So for everyone else, like Nick said, you can join the USA Windows Virtual Desktop group. That's thrive-it.com/USA-WVDUG. That'll take you right to that spot. That's not one of ours. That's just a shortcut to get there, because it's a lot easier than the whole big link. So that's thrive-it.com/USA-WVDUG. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. And take a moment to hit that like button, but subscribe to the channel. This is really important. If you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit that little bell icon to be notified when we're going live. We are just randomly showing up on things at times, and obviously we have these scheduled times we try to keep as often as we can, but sometimes things go wrong, and the way to know about a upcoming show or any changes that we have to make right before a stream starts, for example, getting subscribed is the best way to know about those. And so it's right there on YouTube. You can subscribe, or if you're listening to this on the podcast, then you can go to thrive-it.com/subme. That's thrive-it.com/subme. Or if you just want to view the YouTube channel, try before you buy, just thrive-it.com/YT. That's a shortcut that'll take you directly to the channel. Appreciate you being with us today. And remember, and whatever you're doing out there, make sure you take time to leave it